Hi, it's Rabina. Welcome back to my low carb kitchen. And today we are going to be baking some delicious muffins. These are breakfast muffins and they are considered an E, which stands for energizing, if you follow the Trim Healthy Mama diet plan. These muffins are found in the Trim Healthy Future cookbook and they were super easy to mix and to make. I added all of my dry ingredients and wet ingredients into my high-powered blender. I use a Blendtec blender in case you're wondering what kind I use. And I was able to blend everything up. The recipe is split into what I would consider three parts. The first part is your batter, and then your second part is you put some dry ingredients into your batter to make it more full. And then the last part is you make a glaze for the muffins. So they're very easy to make. My kids were running around while I was making this, so I was able to see what they were doing and check on them every now and again while making these muffins. So super easy. I would consider this recipe a beginner low carb or intro to cooking type of recipe for somebody to make. It made 12 muffins and I was able to put them into the refrigerator so that way the rest of this week we'll have muffins. If anybody wants a quick breakfast, they can grab a muffin, or I just had one tonight as a dessert after my dinner. So you can also use the muffins as a dessert item as well. And they are an E. So that means with the Trim Healthy Mama diet plan, that means these muffins are carb focused and not fat focused. So what I mean by that, if something is carb focused and not fat focused, if it is carb focused, we subtract a lot of the fat. You see me here, I'm using egg whites, liquid egg whites, instead of using the whole egg. The yolk of the egg, that's the fatty portion of it. I'm also using applesauce. This recipe calls for a cup of applesauce. I did not have applesauce in a jar, but I did have these pouches which are not sweetened, so I was able to use these. These just have the natural sweetness that apples have. They don't have any additional sweeteners. So if you're like me and you're a busy mama but you have these applesauce pouches, it takes 3 of them to fill up a cup. This recipe also uses unsweetened almond milk, and you just put everything in the blender like this and then just let it go. And with my Blendtec, I usually like to blend twice. So for the second portion, the dry ingredients that go into the batter to make it more thick, more hearty, more full, I'm cutting up 1 small apple. And then I also, for this recipe, it calls for pecans and raisins. I didn't have any raisins, but the muffins still came out just as good. So the recipe calls for you to finely dice your apples and your raisins. And what I did was I have this old machine. It's a little food processor that you put the lid on and then you pull the string like a chainsaw. So I have this old thing. I love using it. It gets stress out and my kids love using it too. So I put my pecans and my apple pieces into that machine and we just pull the string and then had all the pieces really fine. I highly recommend you do something like this, either with a machine like this or a food processor, or even putting the pecans in a bag and crushing them with a meat mallet. That would be good too. I really appreciated the fineness of the apples and the pecans. I'm not one to enjoy a muffin that has bigger pieces in it. I would rather have smaller pieces in it. And I have a couple of my kids who are very picky when it comes to having nuts or seeds or things like that in items. They can, pick them out. They usually spit them out and then they're disinterested in things like that. But my kids who are like that, because I was able to put the nuts and the apples in that little machine and make everything really fine, they enjoyed the muffins just like the rest of us did. And the glaze was also really delicious. One thing that I would recommend is if you want your muffins to be a little bit sweeter, I would recommend using liquid stevia in this recipe as well. It calls for, I believe it was a 1/3 cup of gentle sweet, which is the Trim Healthy Mama sweetener. I didn't have that, so I used a 1/3 cup of confectioner or erythritol, which is what I love baking with when I'm baking low carb. I like to use the confectioner rather than the granules sweetener. I find that it blends in better with the cooking. It doesn't leave the granule taste there and the granule site there, unless I want those granules there. Like if I'm doing a streusel muffin, then I might be okay with that. But if I'm baking it and it's in something, I would rather use confectioner sweetener than use the granules. So there's another pro tip. If you're baking cakes, muffins, pies, things like that, crust, go for the confectioner sweeteners versus the granule sweeteners. And like I said, I would recommend probably a dash, just a splash of liquid stevia in these muffins, because a 1/3 cup of sweetener, it didn't really make them as sweet. And I like sweet, so if you like sweet like me, the original recipe does not call for the liquid stevia. You can try that to bump up the sweetness. I'm just gonna get them out of the oven.
Ooh, that is good. Please don't my feet. Those things are good. Real good. This is how they came out.
You ready to make the icing? All right.
Wait, are these actually gonna be cupcakes?
Those are muffins.
No, like, is the icing gonna? You said icing. Is it gonna make it look like a cupcake?
They go over the muffins. It's muffin icing. A muffin is just a breakfast cupcake. One.
Does it say 1 tablespoon of milk?
Got a little bit extra in there.
It was like, look at it.
And then we need a 1/4
That's still a 1/4
teaspoon of vanilla. So, we got a little bit extra in there. Mix this all together for us. While hot, spoon the glaze over the top of the muffins. The glaze helps keep the muffins warm, or the glaze helps keep the muffins moist and adds a nice extra hint of sweetness. So I'm gonna let you drizzle the muffins, but I'm gonna get the camera so we can do a close-up shot, okay? Okay. All right, you ready to start? Okay.
But what are you gonna do with that little thingy?
You ready? I gotta snip the end. Lift up the baggie so I can snip the end of it right here.
That ice cream tastes good. I want to hear it. I want to hear it.
You ready to taste it?
Yes.
Okay, grab one.
So good.
Thank you so much for stopping by my channel. Don't forget to hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if you found the content interesting.